It's okay to be good, but there's something about evil we're all endlessly fascinated by. That's why you clicked on this video, isn't it? Seeing that we previously discussed the 3 prime evils from Diablo, and seeing that all of you had a lot to say about these heinous lords of hell, we thought we'd take a closer look at the 4 lesser evils, namely Andariel, Azmodan, Belial, and Duriel. Now of course when you hear the title lesser, you're probably thinking that these demons aren't as powerful or intimidating as the 3 primes, and on their own you may even be right. However, as a united front, the power of the lesser evils rivals or possibly even outstrips that of the primes. In fact, there's a significant body of evidence to suggest that the latter is, in fact, true. Like the 3 primes, the lesser evils were spawned from Tathamet, the 7-headed dragon that did battle with Anu before time as we know it began. While the prime evils embody hate, terror, and destruction, which are undoubtedly powerful dark aspects, the domain of the lesser evils encompasses arguably more subtle but similarly powerful aspects. Andariel, the only female of the lesser evils, is the Maiden of Anguish. Her twin brother Duriel, who is also known as the Maggot King, is the Lord of Pain. Then there's Belial, the Lord of Lies who possessed Emperor Hakan II during the scouring of Keldium in his quest to obtain the Black Soulstone. Finally, Azmodan is the Lord of Sin, who has very nearly defeated Tyrael in the heavenly host on more than one occasion. While Andariel and Duriel are indeed terrible demons with great power, it is Belial and Azmodan who appear to be the leaders and the more cunning and capable of the 4. After the Sin War came to an end, a rift between the prime and lesser evils was effectively opened. There were several reasons for this, but chief of these was the fact that the primes had kept the existence of Sanctuary a secret and deliberately neglected to share this knowledge with their counterparts, ostensibly in order for them to consolidate and increase their power without having to worry about sharing any of it with the remaining Lords of Hell. It also became abundantly clear that the primes were more worried about influencing humanity than focusing on the destruction of the high heavens, which naturally caused the lesser evils to challenge their authority. It was technically Belial, once the protege of Mephisto, who started the civil war in Hell. Being a demon who specializes in deception and subterfuge, Belial manipulated Azmodan into merging their armies and leading a violent insurrection against the prime evils. The result was that the 3 primes were ultimately defeated and banished to Sanctuary, leaving the lesser evils to rule over Hell unchallenged. Of course, this did have its downsides, as the followers of the primes were also banished or simply fled the burning hells, resulting in about 1/3 of all the demons in Hell disappearing to invade and occupy Sanctuary, or parts of it at least. While this was unfortunate, Azmodan was of the opinion that with the primes having no choice but to exist within and continue their dark mission in Sanctuary, Heaven would be forced to focus their efforts on the mortal realm, thus leaving the gates of Heaven largely unguarded and vulnerable to attack. But being the evil entities they are, the unity between Azmodan and Belial would begin to falter as the two argued over which of them held the most power. Since demons aren't exactly known for their ability to negotiate along diplomatic lines, the 2 Lords of Hell waged war against one another in a second civil war, and for a time, it appeared that it was actually Azmodan who held the upper hand, which shouldn't really come as a surprise since his reputation as an expert tactician is practically unrivaled across all the realms. In the end, it would appear the 2 came to some sort of compromise and, in an ironic turn of events, turned their attention towards Sanctuary. It's thus clear that while the lesser evils may differ from the primes in many respects, they are all fundamentally the same. They desire power and authority and want nothing more than the fulfillment of their own agendas. Based on this, and given the tumultuous history of the Lords of Hell, the biggest enemy that both the prime and lesser evils face is themselves and, to a slightly lesser extent, one another. The lesser evils, or at least Azmodan and Belial, are simply too evil and selfish for their own good. The dilemma for the Lords of Hell is that they are wholly unwilling to share anything and don't actually care about anything other than the fulfillment of their own plans. In this way, they are far too single-minded and reductive in their approach to ever really gain the upper hand over their adversaries. Were they able to do so, there is little doubt they would prevail. However, given that they are characteristically evil, being able to do this would require a certain degree of selflessness and consideration, which are virtues, so it would appear that demons are just incapable of this. You could even go so far as to say that this paradox is apparent in many different gaming franchises and stories, but it's arguably no better illustrated than in Diablo. And obviously from a narrative perspective, no one side can ever truly prevail, as that would simply bring the story to an end, and there would simply be nothing more to share with fans. Still, if I were to make a judgment about who the most formidable of the lesser evils is, it would be Azmodan, simply because of the fact that while he has ultimately never succeeded in his offensives, he has come close on many different occasions. That said, his inexperience with humanity and the Nephilim becomes apparent when he is defeated and has his soul sealed in the Black Soulstone towards the end of Diablo 3. To this end, where the primes do demonstrate their foresight and superiority over the lesser evils is in their desire to better understand humanity and have them serve their needs. Initially, the lesser evils evils didn't understand this and so took the act of the primes as a betrayal, which it absolutely was. However, the lesser evils more or less find themselves at a disadvantage owing to the fact that they are essentially late to the party and lack much of the insights the primes have with regard to humanity and their capabilities. I definitely don't doubt the power of Belial and Azmodan, but they are strangely naive when it comes to humanity and even more so when it comes to one another and the primes. The thing with both the prime and lesser evils is that they can never truly be vanquished, merely contained or delayed for a time. The eternal conflict is so named because it's a war that wages on forever with no clear winner in sight. Tathamet battled Anu for countless eons, and even after the apparent demise of each of these entities, they still endure, albeit in different forms, doing much the same as they were before. It's also conceivable that even if there was some kind of end to the war between heaven and hell, a new conflict would arise, and the entire story of good versus evil would begin once again. If nothing else, this means we should get plenty of Diablo content in games for many years to come. I do find it very interesting that when considering the lesser evils, Andariel and Duriel, representing anguish and pain respectively, are twins. With their domains in mind as well as their distinct character designs, it's clear they relate to the passive, sensual parts of the human condition. Similarly, Belial represents lies and Azmodan sin, which represent the more active and directed parts of our dark sides. This inevitably makes me think of how Dante Alighieri, who wrote the Inferno, classified or symbolized sins: a lion for violence, a leopard for fraud, and a she-wolf for incontinence. While making this attribution may be a little bit of a stretch, I would say the three primes mirror the lion as they all embody a form or facet of violence. Then Belial and Azmodan mirror the leopard, since lying is a form of deception and sin is a fraudulent act against God himself. Finally, Andariel and Duriel mirror the she-wolf owing to the sensual base nature of their domains. While the correlation may not be perfect, it's still useful in that it helps to visualize the hierarchy among the great evils within Diablo. In this sense, there are actually three categories: the prime evils, the major lesser evils, Belial and Azmodan, and the minor lesser evils, Andariel and Duriel. While it's definitely an interesting exercise attempting to categorize and understand evil, I would argue that it's actually one of the most important things a human being can do. The worst people generally tend to embrace their dark sides far too readily, or simply haven't taken the time to consider what consequences their thoughts and actions have for themselves and those around them. This can loosely be understood as just being evil, or simply being callous. Either way, whether you're examining evil in philosophy books or reading the Divine Comedy or playing Diablo 4, it's nothing short of a moral and ethical imperative if you ask me. So where are the lesser evils now? Well, after Diablo absorbed all of the great evils into himself using the Black Soul Stone, he became a singular prime evil, a being that was close to or possibly on the same power level as Tathamet. Despite this massive increase in power and very nearly succeeding, Diablo as the prime evil was eventually defeated by the Nephilim. The Black Soul Stone still remained and contained the souls of all the great evils. Malthael then managed to acquire it in an attempt to use it to destroy all of humanity. After facing off against the Nephilim, Malthael shattered the Soul Stone and absorbed the essences of the great evils into himself, thus granting him incredible power. In spite of this, he was defeated, and as his body disintegrated, the souls of all he had absorbed escaped him. Diablo's soul was one of these, and while it still contained the essences of all the other great evils, each broke away from Diablo in time. So to answer the question regarding the whereabouts of the lesser evils, even though they may not have corporeal form or occupy a given domain, as long as their souls persist, so do they. Does this mean the lesser evils, and for that matter the primes, might return one day? Absolutely. The world of Diablo is one of endless suffering and strife, so while their plans may have been halted for now, there is nothing to say the lesser evils couldn't one day return to exact their revenge upon humanity and the heavenly host. In the end, underestimating any of the great evils is a grave miscalculation, and it is impossible to know for sure what their next moves may be. So that's it for today's video. What are your thoughts on the lesser evils? Are they a force to be reckoned with, or are they nothing when compared to the primes? Let us know in the comments. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily gaming, VR, and tech content. From me and the crew here at Metasquad, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!